Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it is my pleasure to have Mark Rocket with us. Mark is an internet and aerospace entrepreneur. He was the seed investor and co-director of Rocket Lab from 2007 to 2011. Mark is CEO of Kea Aerospace, a company that is building a global fleet of solar-powered aircraft that fly in the stratosphere. Wow, that sounds awesome. Mark, it's so great to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Stephan.
we we've known each other for quite a while. So you and I met in New Zealand, and you got your start in the SEO internet industry back in the '90s. Do you want to share your kind of origin story of how you got into this and then how that led to aerospace?
Yeah, well, I left high school and, like a lot of New Zealanders, did the OE or overseas experience with my backpack and a guitar and went around Europe and Australia and did quite a bit of traveling and odd jobs around the place. I was going to go to university, but never quite made it to university. Uh, and then in 1994, I got a lucky break where I picked up a job at one of the first internet companies in Christchurch here in New Zealand. And yeah, I just started off as the office boy, and I had a bit of background in hospitality, so I could kind of work with the customers and just really started at ground zero there. And uh, then gradually I got really interested in website marketing, and I realized a lot of people were building websites. They were getting their domain names, building a basic web page, and then that was it. They didn't really kind of know the next step, and probably similar to your journey, Stephan, where I really got intrigued by search engines and how people found websites and how you can get more traffic to your website. And that's when I started picking up SEO in that sort of 96, 97 sort of phase. And then I started a company in 1998 called Avatar, and also another company called New Zealand Tourism Online, which was a web directory for tourism in New Zealand. And Avatar is yeah still going. It's an SEO company, still cranking along here in New Zealand. But yeah, the focus back then was SEO, but we found that it was a little bit early, and people didn't really kind of know what search engine optimization was. So we started to build websites with an SEO focus, and that was a real sweet spot for us for many years, where we built hundreds of websites with a marketing SEO focus and got some really great successes there. And using that same methodology, we built up New Zealand Tourism Online to be the number one commercial tourism directory in New Zealand, and that ended up being purchased by Telecom here in 2006. And then from there, my sort of journey went into other places such as aerospace. But yeah, certainly those early days of the internet were fascinating, and it was I just feel so fortunate to be part of that, and watching how things evolved. And we knew that the internet would change and become a lot more commercial. But back in those mid '90s, it was very much controlled by university type people, sort of propeller head type people that would sort of deepen the code and maybe a little bit anti commercial. But obviously we've fully gone down that path now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, why did you call your first company Avatar?
Well, I was sort of looking for a name that kind of resonated, and I wanted it to start with A, because back in those days, things were pretty much alphabetical, and
Yep.
yeah, just came across that word, and it's a representation of yourself in a digital environment, and it's kind of like a super user type scenario. Yeah, and it just really resonated, and we built the sort of sci-fi logo with blue coloring and etc. And then obviously the movie came out a number of years later. uh, so
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of a weird scenario that movie was filmed a lot in New Zealand, and I had Century 20th Century Fox contact me about trademark issues, but we were well set up before before that movie came along. But yeah, love that movie. I'm looking forward to Avatar 2 and 3 coming out soon. well, next few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. That's cool. And speaking of names, you weren't born Mark Rocket. You changed your name to Rocket. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, in the year 2000, I met a few people that had changed the name, and I thought, what would I change my name to? And uh, I I thought Rocket would be super cool as a name to have,
That's
and
pretty cool. Yeah.
idea just grew on me, and the power of the words, they're so evocative, and I thought it was something that would push me a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I thought it'd be kind of fun, be interesting for marketing, but it's sort of turned out to be this kind of manifestation of getting into the aerospace industry and furthering my interest in aerospace technology. So it's kind of weird how it's all kind of worked out, but yeah,
So
I
you
think
didn't know
those.
when you changed your name that you were going to get into the aerospace industry, that you weren't like the next Rocket Man? You just thought, oh, that sounds like a fun name.
Well, I'd always been fascinated by space technology growing up as a kid, and
Hmm.
yeah, I started with space Lego, and it sort of evolved from there. Reading lots of science fiction books and uh, watching movies. My number one favorite film is Alien. It's just like gritty truckers in space, and it has a lot more realism than say Star Wars or Star Trek in some areas. So
Hmm.
yeah, I was really fascinated by the technology and future. So yeah, I guess in 2000, I had these aspirations, but growing up in Christchurch here in New Zealand, we didn't have a space industry. There was no kind of military industrial complex with a whole lot of development. Uh, so it seemed like a galaxy far, far away to be able to ever aspire to being involved in the space industry from New Zealand. But yeah, it's certainly something that I have always been interested in. And there's a lot of other computer geeks that have an interest in space. That cyberspace and space have a correlation. If you look at Jeff Bezos, he puts $1 billion a year into his Blue Origin project. Elon Musk obviously came from PayPal. Co-founder of Microsoft, Paul Allen, funded the Virgin Galactic spaceship. There's a whole lot of internet geeks that are also space geeks, and I guess I'm one of them.
Yeah, cool. So you've really made a big transition, a big pivot in your life, going from internet industry stuff to aerospace. And um, I'm curious, are you still running, or do you still own Avatar, or did you end up selling that? And like, do you completely have you completely disavowed yourself of all the internet tech companies and areas of focus to go full on into aerospace?
Yeah, I'll certainly pull back a lot. I have a team that runs Avatar, and they're doing a great job. And I sold New Zealand Tourism Online to Telecom in 2006. So yeah, I'm definitely doing very little in the internet industry compared to where I was. So, these
Right.
days I'm the CEO of Kea Aerospace, which is building a solar powered aircraft that will fly in the stratosphere for months at a time. And that's a really exciting and engaging and pretty full on project. So that's a heck of a lot of fun and really, really fascinating. But yeah, maybe, stepping back, how I got involved with the aerospace industry. So when I did make that sale, I had a bit of gas in the tank and thought, what some fun stuff I can do. And uh, back in the year 2000, I wrote down the life goal of going to space one day. And in 2006, I was in that position to kind of look at opportunities, and Virgin Galactic were selling their suborbital space flights. So I went on to virgingalactic.com and uh, got in touch with them and started talking about what they offer, and it sounded incredibly compelling and a lot of fun. And being part of a first sort of group of diverse international people was really interesting. So I signed up with them early on, and got to do lots of cool trips, and talk with Virgin Galactic and a lot of the other people that have signed up. And actually, in 2006, as part of one of those first events, I went to the International Space Development Conference in LA and heard Elon Musk talking, and other people there talking about this growing space industry. But I realized that most of that activity was all happening in one half of the planet. And in the southern hemisphere, there was very little going on. And I thought it would be so great if we could get something happening in New Zealand and Australia. And so when I came back to New Zealand, I started talking to people about that. And a guy called Peter Beck had an idea for a rocket company. And yeah, we got together, started talking about it. And in 2007, we started commercial operations of Rocket Lab. And yeah, back then people thought we were a little bit nuts because New Zealand didn't have that aerospace pedigree. It just seemed a little bit far-fetched for someone from New Zealand to start a viable space business. But yeah, we sort of pushed along, and in 2009 we had our first suborbital space launch, and that went really well. And then from there we won contracts with Australia and America agencies, and that really put us on the map. And yeah, now Rocket Lab has orbital program, and in fact there's a mission on the way to the moon at the moment that was launched by Rocket Lab. So I'm incredibly proud to see where that company has gone, and employs hundreds of people in New Zealand and America, and is certainly a real success story.
That's awesome. So how did you end up leaving that? That sounded like your dream gig, like you were co-running uh, that company, and it was something you're incredibly passionate about, and you were the seed investor, so you provided that first bit of fuel to get the business up and running. I'm curious why leave it.
Yeah, well, it was incredibly exciting to be part of that startup journey. At the commencements of the company, Peter and I agreed that we didn't want to get into the military projects too much. And then in 2011, it kind of worked out that the biggest commercial opportunity the company had was for a military project that I wasn't that keen on. And I think it made commercial sense for the company, but it just wasn't something that I felt passionate about. So yeah, I stepped out, and I also had young kids. And then yeah, around that time we had some earthquakes here in Christchurch as well, and
Right.
that kind of affected things quite a lot here. Quite a amazing thing for the city to go through. About
Yeah,
100.
it reshaped the entire city, although downtown completely unrecognizable. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'd already moved out of Christchurch by that point, thankfully. But yeah, it was really devastating.
Mm. Yeah, to live through that was amazing. 185 people died and thousands of people were injured, and yeah, it basically just decimated the whole inner city. But I think here we are now. I mean, it's obviously tragic that happened, but I think people in Canterbury have a really strong identity, and to go through your whole city kind of breaking apart, you see there's a lot of kindness in society, and people help each other a lot, and it really kind of makes you see that side of the human spirit where we all kind of work together and want to fix things. And it was great to be part of that in some ways.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really yeah, important work when you're doing stuff to help lead people out of a tragedy or out of uh, something that shakes their very kind of core foundation, and you can um, help people through that and be kind of a light through the darkness. That's really important. That's much more important than
Mm.
making a cool new widget and making a big pile of money.
Yeah, and then yeah, I had young children, so I wanted to sort of slow down a little bit. I'd had a pretty crazy few decades, and so I wanted to be there for them growing up. And I also worked for a non-profit organisation for animal advocacy, and that organisation has been doing great things to really push animal rights and plant-based options, and it's made a real difference here in New Zealand. So it was great to be part of that journey. And then 2017, I was sort of thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? Do I want to go to the internet again or do aerospace? And realised I kind of felt I had a bit of unfinished business in the aerospace area, and in 2018 set up Kea Aerospace. And the two main goals was to help build the aerospace ecosystem here in the South Island, in Canterbury and Christchurch, where I live, and also to find another interesting aerospace project. And in 2018 we started these meetups and started connecting aerospace people here, and that's gone incredibly well. We've got a bunch of companies doing advanced aviation and space projects. The University of Canterbury has been producing fantastic graduates, and a lot of it kind of bugged me that these graduates had to go off to Auckland or overseas to actually work in the aerospace industry. And so I was very keen to see more jobs be established here in the city. So it's been great to see that growth and flourishing. I've been working with a bunch of different people, and it's gone incredibly well. We've got Dawn Aerospace, which is a rocket plane company based here in Christchurch, and there's a number of other advanced aviation type projects doing really interesting work. I think Christchurch and New Zealand in general is a great place to do R&D for aerospace. We've got low population density, open skies, variable terrain, so we're kind of a great test bed for technology. We've attracted people from around the world to come and set up shop here and do interesting stuff. And 2019 we got some funding to do a aerospace strategy for the city, and that really brought all the key stakeholders together, from university, the city council, central government, and basically really aligned people. And now aerospace is recognised by the city as one of the key growth areas. And a couple of weeks ago, I was actually on a trade delegation with the mayor of Christchurch. Well, actually, it was the deputy mayor because the mayor got sick. But it was a mayoral delegation to Adelaide in South Australia. Adelaide's actually got the Australian Space Agency headquarters, and they have a lot of really interesting stuff going on there as well. So it was great for the city to kind of exchange ideas and help each other grow these aerospace industries. So we've got a lot of momentum, a lot of excitement. September 5th, we've got our first New Zealand Aerospace Summit. We're bringing together all of the aerospace participants around New Zealand to help build an aerospace nation. So we've got a lot of really exciting momentum building here.
That's cool. Now, are you does Christchurch actually have a place to shoot off rockets, or does it have to happen out of, let's say, Auckland area or somewhere else?
Yeah, well, at the moment, Rocket Lab is launching from the North Island on the east coast, a place called the Mahia Peninsula, which is just a spectacular launch location. But originally, Rocket Lab were wanting to launch here just near Christchurch. And the government has actually bought a whole bunch of land on the coast, and it's a partnership with local Runanga, local Indigenous tribes here, and the government, and they're looking at re-establishing some ecological aspects of the land and also use it as an R&D aerospace test bed. Potentially we could have Spaceport Christchurch in 2030. There could be some rocket launches. In fact, NASA did launch in the area. It's called Kaitoriti Spit. NASA did launch in the area in partnership with the University of Canterbury some suborbital rockets in the 1960s. I'd love to see space launches here again. We'll see what happens. But certainly there's a lot of local interest in developing that capability. And people are doing test flights around the region. We've got another place called Tekapo and Whisk, which is owned by Boeing. they've been doing a bunch of beyond visual line of sight flights out of that area, and there's a number of other kind of locations that people are doing test flights.
How did you end up focusing on solar-powered aircraft that fly for months at a time in the stratosphere? That seems like a very specialized kind of use case. What were you? What problem are you trying to solve there, and how did you end up coming across that?
Yeah, well, as I said, when I started Kea Aerospace, I had two main goals. One is to help build the ecosystem and connect people and work with other people. And the second one was to try and find an interesting aerospace project. And so I started to hang out at the university, try and meet interesting people. And one of those people I met was Dr. Philip Saltrop. And interestingly, he came to New Zealand to do his PhD because he saw Rocket Lab had been involved with the University of Canterbury and had some great expertise. So he actually came from Germany, set up here, and I came into contact with him, and we started talking about different ideas. And initially, we were thinking about some sort of orbital payload type scenario. Because we do have that orbital launch capability, I was sort of initially interested in space hardware type applications, but realized that already there's so many universities and companies all around the world building CubeSats and doing interesting stuff, and they've got way more funding than what we can easily access here in New Zealand. So started looking around at other kind of projects, and Philip came up. He saw these other projects that had been working on stratospheric flight, and realized as we sort of dug into it that is something that New Zealand could do, and it's a very fascinating area. I mean, if you think about it, you've got satellites that are orbiting at hundreds of kilometers, maybe 400 plus kilometers, they're orbiting the Earth, and we're using them for Earth observation, but because the satellites are so far away, it is hard to take a high resolution image at what is useful. So most of the high resolution images you see of the land or sea actually comes from aircraft, that crewed aircraft, manned aircraft that are flying, but that is very inefficient, very very costly. So as a result, there's a big data gap at the moment where we just aren't getting that full data picture. For example, here in Canterbury, we only get a high resolution map of the region about once every 4 years. It takes a long time to go back and forth and kind of do that mapping. And it's pretty old school. Basically they've got a plane, they have a hard drive and a camera, and they basically chuck that on, go back and forth, take that hard drive off the plane, take it back to the office. It's just a little bit laborious, and sort of I think there's a lot of scope to improve that. So you think about planes that might fly at sort of 5 to 10 kilometers altitude, and it's very expensive, burns a lot of avgas. These stratospheric vehicles are flying at around 20 kilometers altitude, about 65,000 feet, and you're above the jet streams, you're above all the weather. It's actually 93% of the Earth's air density is below you, so you only got about 7% of the air density up there. So you need a really huge wingspan glider type aircraft that is incredibly light, and if you can use solar power, then that's a great way just to have it flying continuously for months at a time. So right now we've got the Airbus Zephyr aircraft, which has been flying for over 40 days over America, and we've got a few companies around the world that have proven the stratospheric flight capability. I think in the 2020s we're going to see some huge developments in this area, particularly around communications and Earth observation, and we'll be able to finally get that full high resolution data picture that will make so much of a difference with really important applications, such as disaster management, with floods and fires and earthquakes, being able to see quickly what's going on. maritime domain awareness, environmental monitoring is something that we're very passionate about. You can't really fix the problem if you can't see it, and so this is going to give that sort of full picture about what is actually going on. Smart cities, there's so many different applications where this full data picture will make such a huge difference.
Oh. Now, you named this company Kea Aerospace. Is that after the New Zealand parrot, the Kea?
Yeah, well, here in the South Island of New Zealand, we have a mountain parrot called the Kea, and it's a beautiful bird, very cheeky, extremely intelligent, but disruptive. When people go up into the mountains to go skiing, they love to take the rubber out of the windows and do all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's great to have that emblem for our company, and yeah, I guess we want to maybe take up some of those traits.
Like tearing out the rubber from people's cars.
Well, maybe being a little bit disruptive in the industry, and yeah,
Yeah.
doing things in an interesting way.
Yeah. So I'm curious if there was a certain moment in your childhood where maybe you saw a shooting star, maybe you saw a UFO, or what they would call a UAP now. Just to mess with our heads. That's the new acronym
Yeah.
that the U.S. government's come up with. Like what was the thing, that moment that sparked everything for you in this desire to go out into space?
Well, I think I'm a Star Wars generation kid, and I grew up with all that great technology, all the ideas. But you know, growing up in the 1970s and 1980s, there was so much information available. We had these great books, all these great films were coming out, and yeah, I just was particularly intrigued. But I think I do remember an initial project where we were just naming the planets of the solar system. And, as I started to think about the solar system and galaxies and the universe, I just found all the concepts kind of mind blowing. And it still surprises me that more people don't really think about humanity's place in the universe. We're very focused, in our little immediate area, but we very rarely kind of step back and have that overview effect of where we are on the Earth and where we are in our solar system, our galaxy, our universe. And I always found those big concepts, really fascinating. It makes your mind hurt when you start thinking about infinity, and when did the universe begin? How did it begin? What was before the universe began? All that stuff is kind of mind warping, but incredibly intriguing. So yeah, I think for me, just exploring that was fascinating.
Mm. Did you have how many trips to space did you have, and were they all on Virgin Galactic, or have you been on? Did you ever do like that the Russian rocket? I forget what it's called. That take people up to the International Space Station for $20 million. Did you ever do that?
No, I haven't done that, but yeah, basically, I'm still waiting in line with Virgin Galactic. There's about 70 of us that are in this sort of Virgin Galactic founders group, and yeah, they've had a few issues along the way. So initially, I think it was around 2009, they had a nitrous oxide tank explode, and that killed 3 people and injured 3 others really badly in Mojave. And then I think it was around 2014, they had a spacecraft that basically disintegrated in flight. And so, yeah, unfortunately, one of the members of the flight crew died on that flight, but amazingly, one of them survived. And yeah, I think there's been a number of things along the way that have made it difficult for Virgin Galactic to upscale that kind of one-person vehicle that won the X Prize into a 6-passenger or 4-passenger aircraft that can fly commercially. So we saw Richard Branson go up last year, and that was great to see him do that flight. And now we're waiting for commercial operations to begin. So yeah, I'm just sort of waiting patiently. The Virgin Galactic team have been fantastic, and hopefully next year we might be getting pretty close to starting those commercial flights.
Yeah. Speaking of the X Prize, do you know Peter Diamandis?
I did meet him at one of the Virgin Galactic events, and he's an incredible person. Everything that he has been part of is so inspiring. So, yeah,
he's got this mastermind called Abundance 360. I did that mastermind for a few years. It was really good.
Yeah,
I recommend it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I've met a bunch of different people in the aerospace industry, and meeting Brian Binney, one of the pilots of Spaceship One, and Peter Diamandis. There are so many inspiring people doing really fascinating things, which help pushing the aerospace industry along. Now, if you think back to the Apollo program in the 1960s, what was achieved in 10 years was absolutely phenomenal. And there was a huge motivation for the country to do that. And then things started to slow down. And, in 1982, I think it was 81, 82, the space shuttle launched for the first time. And that was meant to be a cost-effective way to get people and cargo to space. I think they were aiming for about a $50 million budget per launch, and it ended up being about $1 billion per launch. It really kind of blew out the cost and slowed down a lot of the space plans. Now, if you think back to Arthur C. Clarke's 2001, where are the space hotels, the moon bases, and all those space flights? And we're basically over 30 years behind schedule. Where we could have been if we had have kept up that investment in space technology. So yeah, I think it's really exciting now that we're finally seeing this investment, and we've got this convergence of technology with the miniaturization and computing power and new materials, and now we can do things in a way better way. So you're seeing SpaceX with their reusable rocket program, and they're just doing things way more cost effectively, and having Elon Musk with these bold plans to go to the Mars and the moon and Mars is fantastic. So having these inspiring leaders, I think is going to be tremendous for the aerospace industry internationally, and I think it's going to inspire people to want to really get involved a lot more. And I know some people say to me, why space? We've got so many problems on Earth. Why do we need space technology? But I actually think that a lot of the problems on Earth will actually be solved if we do look to space. We can harness the sun's energy directly from space. We can mine helium-3. We don't need to be digging up the Earth. We can mine asteroids. And by living in space sustainably, we're going to bring that technology to be able to live more sustainably on Earth. And just in the same way that the Apollo program sparked so many great technologies and advanced so many areas, I think this new pace of space development is really going to help things on Earth a heck of a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of sustainable living, and that circles back to then your animal advocacy and the plant-based diet kind of nonprofit work that you did. Can you speak more to that and how you ended up doing that? It's pretty different from internet technology and aerospace.
Yeah, well, I think it was about 24. I became vegetarian, and I'd always been kind of interested in that area. And then 2011 is when I started on the board of Safe for Animals, which is an animal advocacy organization. And
Mm-hmm.
I became vegan at that point. And I think animal agriculture and that industry, hasn't been that kind to animals. And in fact, do we actually really need to consume that amount of meat, dairy, animal products? So, I mean, I certainly feel that the planet would be way better off if we did reduce a lot of that activity. And to even just to make a liter of milk, it takes 1,000 liters, over 1,000 liters of water. It's just not that great for the environment. It's not that great for the animals. And it's kind of like the Matrix. When you start going down the rabbit hole and you look into it more and more, you realize how bad it is. A lot of people don't think about that glass of milk. You've got female cows that produce that milk, but where do all the males go? And all the little male calves, the bobby calves, in a lot of countries like New Zealand, they're a few days old, a week old, and they get left out at the farm gate, and a truck comes to pick them up and take them away. Uh, there's a lot of things that people don't really realize about the animal agriculture industry, and the more you look into it, um, yeah, the more you're aware, and you'll make a choice. And for me, it was pretty clear what choice I needed to make.
Yeah, I remember I was living in New Zealand at the time with uh, my daughters and my then wife, and my daughters had already become vegetarian, and my middle daughter was working on a school project. She needed help with importing in some videos from PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and this was a PowerPoint presentation that she was giving on why become vegetarian. And I had to keep watching these hidden camera videos over and over and over again because the import kept not working, and I kept having to try different things to make the import work into PowerPoint. And it was really
Mm,
upsetting,
mm,
disturbing to see these hidden camera videos, like chickens being stepped on, and
mm,
they're really cruel workers who will do stuff like put the cigarette out in the chicken's eye.
mm.
Crazy, just
Yeah,
sick.
yeah,
What kind of tormented soul would do that to a innocent
mm,
animal, helpless animal?
yeah. I think
Anyway,
luckily,
so that was what switched me to becoming a vegetarian
yeah.
myself, and I've been vegetarian ever since.
Yeah, I think luckily it's only a small majority, a minority of people that work in the animal industry that do that. I mean, the reality is, at the organisation I worked at, we had a lot of people that worked in the industry that would basically give us information and tell us what's going on. And I think a lot of farmers, they want to be proud of what they do, and they do make efforts to make things comfortable where they can. And we are seeing this trend, and it's about shining the spotlight of truth on this stuff. And the more you do that, the more visibility you get, and the better things will head in the right direction. And we're seeing this massive wave of interest in plant-based foods and plant-based living, and that's fantastic. I look at my kids' generation, and there's so many more of them now that are moving in that direction. Here in New Zealand, we can go to the shops and easily get plant-based food, compared to 20 years ago, it was really hard, and yeah, it was difficult to live in a vegan kind of way. But these days it's really easy to live comfortably and have all the great foods that you like. Uh, so I think we're seeing this amazing transition, this real awareness now that I think will keep growing. But there's a battle on. The people want to hold on to their old ways. There's a lot of people that are very proud of their meat eating lifestyle, and there's always going to be that tension. But I think we're definitely seeing a huge wave of interest and a huge wave of change going towards plant-based living, and yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where that ends up in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, there's like a directory. I don't know if it's popular over in New Zealand, but it's popular here in the States. It's called Happy Cow, happycow.net, of vegan and vegetarian restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have anything like that, or like a Yelp type resource over there in New Zealand?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of those types of directories. So yeah, really easy to find vegetarian, vegan food. So there's just so many restaurants and cafes around that do that. So yeah, we're really lucky in New Zealand to have that awareness. And
I have not had that many conversations over the years on this podcast about vegetarianism or veganism, and even though I have been vegetarian, and for a while I was vegan, it's been at least a decade of me being, and more than that, maybe 15 years, 20 years, I don't know, a long time of me being vegetarian. And the thing that I see people who are really passionate about plant-based diets and vegetarianism and veganism is they want to instill their values in everybody else, and it's very hard to have a conversation with somebody who believes so strongly in that and doesn't listen to the other side. And people will shut off. And there's like, I'm sure you've heard this joke before, like, how do you tell if somebody's vegan? Oh, well, they'll tell you, right? It's like, and that's not actually a joke, it's very real. So I want to be mindful of not pushing my own values and agenda on other people, especially if they're not ready for it. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you go through this evangelical stage where you want to tell everyone the message about veganism, and yeah, a lot of the people that can be described as annoying vegans tend to be kind of new to the game. So yeah, those first few years, people have a lot of energy around that, and and some people maintain that. But I think a lot of people just kind of settle down and they just want to live things in their way, and they'll bring it up if they're asked. I mean, I actually never bring it up unless people say to me, "Oh, I see you ordered the vegan option," and then they'll ask you about it, and I'll mention about it. But I don't like to sort of push the ideas too much, and I just say, "Hey, you can look up for information here and here and here." But I think it is important that people do see the full story. We get so many messages in the media that are sponsored by the meat industry or the dairy industry, and people do kind of need to see the other side of the story as well. So I think it's about balance. People need to be able to choose. They need to actually see the accurate truth of what's going on. What are these industries doing to the environment, to animals, and let people decide if they want to support that. Whereas that maybe especially 10, 20 years ago, there was a lot of stuff that was hidden and a lot of stuff that people didn't want to talk about. Even Greenpeace, I've been supporters of Greenpeace for many years. And here in New Zealand, they did not want to take on the dairy industry for a long, long time until there was a change of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt that plant-based living was a little bit more reasonable. Then they've actually finally started to take on the dairy industry. But it's just such a powerful lobby group here, and there's so many people that are deeply invested in it that you really need to have a clear strategy on how you're going to take on that kind of behemoth. So, yeah, I think it's about. I mean, for me, I'll talk to people about what I believe, but I certainly don't want to push it down, people's throat as far as this is the way you got to do things. So yeah, hopefully there can be respect on both sides.
Yeah, for somebody who's open to considering vegetarianism, or at least a mostly plant-based diet, a great movie, documentary to watch is The Game Changers on Netflix. Have you seen that?
Yeah. So there's some really good documentaries that have come out. So yeah, and they're really good at getting people interested and being given more information about what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Forks Over Knives is that's also a very good one.
Yeah.
A little while ago, you mentioned the Matrix and going down the rabbit hole. What other areas have you gone down that rabbit hole and seen the Matrix, or gotten, I don't know, into maybe dark dystopian paths, and had to unplug from it, sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I think if you watch the news cycle and all that, it's easy to kind of get a bit bummed out about things. But I think the reality is most people are decent, most people are good, and I saw that in the earthquakes. People want to help each other out. Most people are great, and you've got to unplug from the corporate news cycle and choose your own media. I think that's something that's really helped me a lot. I'm a fairly optimistic person, and the times that I do get pessimistic is when I'm consuming too much of that stuff. Reading actually, there's an audiobook I'm listening to at the moment called Humankind. I don't know if you've heard of that book, Humankind, but yeah, it's basically talking about that. That a lot of the tropes and stuff that we believe is actually not true. Lord of the Flies type books had a huge imprint on Western society, but is it even true? If you did leave a bunch of kids on an island, would they turn feral, or would they actually work together? And one of the examples in the book is there was some Tongan kids, I think there were about 6 kids, that ended up taking a boat, ended up floating along the ocean for about 8 or 9 days, and ended up on an island in Fiji and lived there for over a year, and they worked together and did incredibly well. I think most people do want to work it out and help each other. So yeah, I think we just got to be really careful about when you think, oh, most people are bad and they want to do the wrong thing. Is that really true? So yeah, that's something that's sort of interesting me at the moment. But yeah, formerly I've been a musician, and so yeah, play guitar and sing, and done quite a bit of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was really great to have that kind of creative element in my life, and haven't been playing guitar so much lately, but it's something I'd kind of like to get back into at some point. But right now,
You totally should. Yeah.
But yeah, right now, I'm fully engaged with Kea Aerospace, and we've basically got this team where we're building the solar powered aircraft, and it's just an incredible journey to be part of. We've got an amazing skill set, and yeah, I think finding that passion is a key thing in my life. That I've had kind of ups and downs, and I think a lot of people do. I've only had a couple of good ideas in my life, and when you do get that real excitement about something, you've really got to follow it, and that's something that I've had some success in, where you just get that intuition and that deep excitement about something, and when you do, if you're lucky enough to get that, then you've got to go all in and just go after that. So yeah, I feel like I'm in one of those sort of zones at the moment where I'm really lucky to have this mission that I'm very passionate about, and surrounded by fantastic people, and being part of something that is making a difference is incredibly exciting.
Mm. Yes, it is. And if you had one thing to tell your younger self while you're maybe going through a hard time or trying to figure things out, what would you tell that younger version of you, and at what point in your life would you send that message?
Yeah. Well, I've certainly had rocky parts in my life where I haven't had the sort of self-belief or valued myself as much as I could have. So yeah, I think just probably simply just to say, follow your dream, and yeah, just don't kind of lose hope. I think that's a huge thing. If you kind of lose that hope that you can make a difference in a positive way, then yeah, you can go into some sort of dark places. But if you can find those areas that you can make a difference in, and feel like you're making a contribution, then it can just open up all these vistas of opportunity.
Hmm. Yep, good stuff. All right. Well, this is you're an inspiring guy, and thank you for sharing your story and all the amazing stuff you're up to. If folks wanted to follow you on social and um, what you're, maybe read your blog, or if you have one, or your YouTube channel, any of that. So where would we send folks to?
Yeah, we can check out KeaAerospace.com. That's KEA aerospace.com, and check out what we're doing there. And at the bottom, you'll see some social media links at the bottom of that webpage. And yeah, that's probably the best way to stay in touch with what we're up to. We've been a little bit quiet lately on the social media, but over the next year, we're going to be doing a bunch of really exciting announcements. And our first stratospheric flight is scheduled for January or February next year. And yeah, we've got a bunch of other stuff coming up. So yeah, if you're interested in following us, then
Well, that might actually have launched by the time this episode airs.
right,
because we're recording in 2022, but this episode is scheduled to air in 2023. So.
Okay, well, it'll be great
Yeah.
to know where things are at by then. So, I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to have a crystal
Yeah.
ball, and if you kind of knew some of those key milestones coming up? I mean, maybe it's better not to, but in some ways, it would it would be fascinating to kind of tweak things.
Could be. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. And thank you, listener. And I hope this inspires you to shoot for the stars. Do something that you think might just be impossible. Do it anyways. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.